The first sound was not a roar, but a low, shuddering breath. It came from the edge of the forest, where the mist still clung to the earth and birds had fallen silent. A man named Karim froze mid-step. His eyes caught a flash of tawny fur between the ferns, half buried under a broken acacia. The lion's chest rose weakly, dust clinging to its menere. One paw twitched, claws dragging faintly in the dirt. Karim whispered, "He's alive." Others gathered, farmers, woodcutters, herders, men who had spent their lives fearing the wild. Yet something in that stillness felt sacred. The lion was no longer the king they imagined but a fallen creature, exhausted, cornered by fate. The villagers stood in a cautious circle. No one moved closer. The animal's amber eyes, clouded but aware, tracked their every motion. His breath rattled like dry wind through reeds. A young boy stepped forward, clutching a rope. "We can pull the branch," he said softly. His voice wavered, not from bravery, but from pity. Karim nodded. "We do this slow. No shouting." They gathered tools, a rusted axe, a rope, a wooden pole. The forest seemed to hold its breath as they approached. Every creak of the tree made them flinch. One wrong move could send the animal lunging, and yet none of them turned away. The lion didn't snarl. His gaze was steady, wide with fatigue. Flies buzzed near a wound on his shoulder where bark had torn his skin. Karim knelt, heart pounding. He could feel the animal's breath on his arm, hot, uneven, but alive. The first strike of the axe echoed like thunder. The villagers froze again. The lion's ears flicked, muscles tensed, then loosened. Slowly, they lifted the branch inch by inch. The ropes groaned. Sweat ran into Karim's eyes. When the last weight shifted, the lion heaved a breath that sounded almost human, deep and trembling. His legs buckled as he tried to stand. The villagers stepped back quickly, giving space. For a moment, no one spoke. Dust rose in the golden morning light. The lion looked at them, not as prey nor threat, but as something between. His menere shimmered faintly in the sun as he steadied himself, shaking the leaves from his coat. Then, with a low rumble, not anger, but something like gratitude, he limped toward the trees. Karim watched until the forest swallowed the golden form completely. The silence that followed was different now, not fear, not danger, but peace. The villagers said little on the walk home. One man finally whispered, "He could have killed us." Karim smiled faintly. He didn't. At dusk, the wind carried a single deep roar from the forest, distant, strong, alive. The men stopped, listening. It felt like a farewell or a thank you. And for years after, whenever they passed that grove, they spoke more softly, cut fewer trees, and left water near the edge, a quiet offering to the day the wild had trusted their hands. The forest had held its breath once. And when it exhaled, something in them had changed forever. The evening sky burned orange as the last call to prayer drifted through the valley. Goats bleated softly in their pens, and smoke from cooking fires curled toward the hills. Karim was tending his fields when the shepherd's cry cut through the calm. "Lion!" At the edge of the fields. Tools dropped. Men ran from their homes, hearts pounding. The memory of that wounded beast, the same one they had freed, came rushing back like thunder. Women pulled children indoors, slamming wooden doors. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of dust and fear. But Karim did not run. He stood still, eyes on the far slope. There, half-shrouded by the dying light, stood the lion. The beast looked stronger now, ribs no longer visible beneath his coat, menere fuller, his body steadier. Yet he did not advance. He only watched. Behind him, the forest glowed in the sunset's fire, each leaf trembling in the slow wind. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then Karim took a cautious step forward. The lion's head lifted slightly, eyes gleaming like molten gold. Karim could almost hear the slow rhythm of his breath, deep and even. It was not the sound of hunger, it was recognition. A few villagers whispered behind him. "He's come for revenge," one said. "He remembers." But Karim's heart told a different story. "No," he murmured. "He remembers kindness." The lion's tail flicked once. A faint scar still marked his shoulder where the tree had crushed him. The sight of it filled the men with quiet wonder. The wild creature had survived because of their hands, and now stood before them whole again. A gust of wind carried dry leaves between them, swirling like a thin veil. Karim raised his hand, palm open, the same hand that had once held the axe and rope. For an endless heartbeat, the lion did not move. Then he gave a low, rumbling sound, not a roar, but a deep vibration that rolled through the ground like distant thunder. A sound of presence, not threat. He stepped closer. The villagers tensed. But he stopped several paces away, eyes fixed on Karim. Karim bowed his head slightly, not in fear, but respect. "Go," he said softly. "The forest waits for you." That was the only line spoken that evening. The rest was silence. The lion turned, moving with slow grace toward the darkening trees. His paw prints pressed deep into the damp soil, heavy, certain, eternal. When he reached the forest's edge, he paused once more and glanced back over his shoulder. In the fading light, it felt like a farewell. Then he was gone. The forest swallowed him once again, the way night swallows the last light of day. Karim stood there long after the others had left. The breeze stirred the crops. From somewhere deep in the forest came a faint, distant call, a lion's roar, low and steady, echoing across the valley. It did not sound like danger. It sounded like memory. That night, as the village lights flickered out, no one spoke of fear. Instead, they spoke softly of the balance between life and mercy, how one act of courage could ripple through the wild, how the eyes of a lion could remind them of their own humanity. In the days that followed, no one hunted near that grove again. The villagers began leaving water in clay bowls by the tree line, offerings not of fear, but of respect. And sometimes, at dusk, when the wind moved through the grass just right, it seemed to whisper a deep, familiar breath, as if the forest itself remembered the day humans and lion had met halfway, neither as predator nor prey, but as equals beneath the same fading sun. The first roar rolled through the valley before sunrise, deep, layered, alive. It wasn't one voice but many. Karim stirred awake, the sound stirring something both ancient and sacred in his chest. He stepped outside, bare feet sinking into cool earth. Mist hung low over the fields, turning the world pale and quiet. Then he saw them. Shapes moved in the fog beyond the tree line, golden, fluid, soundless. A pride. 6 lions, maybe 7. At their front, the great male stood tall, menere darkened by dew and dawnlight. Karim knew him instantly. The same lion they had once freed. Fear rippled through the village like wind through dry grass. Doors creaked, whispers rose. "They've come to hunt." But Karim shook his head. "They're not hunting." His voice was steady, though his heart pounded hard enough to hurt. The lions did not cross the boundary where field met forest. They lingered there, silent and alert, their breath forming soft clouds in the morning chill. Cubs crouched low, eyes wide and curious. A lioness yawned, exposing sharp teeth that glinted like ivory. Karim took one careful step forward. The earth was wet beneath his heels, the air thick with the scent of wild grass. He could hear each slow exhale from the pride, deep, rhythmic, alive. The male lifted his head. Their eyes met again, across a distance that was more than space. It was the line between worlds. Karim remembered that same look weeks ago, wounded, uncertain, searching. Now it held strength, calm, and something unspoken, a message carried without words. Behind him, others had gathered, men, women, even the boy who had first brought the rope. None dared speak. The lion took a few steps closer, his paws soundless on the soil. The cubs followed, weaving between the legs of the lionesses. The villagers tensed. The boy gasped. But then the lion stopped. He lowered his head, pressing his muzzle briefly to the ground. The gesture was almost reverent. The lioness beside him mirrored the movement, brushing her cheek along the earth where human scent lingered. No one could explain what that meant, only that it did not feel like threat. Karim bent slowly, picked up a clay bowl filled with water, and placed it near the field's edge. The lions watched. Not one moved closer. The male's tail flicked once, twice, then stilled. A bird called from the trees, breaking the silence. The lion turned, brushing his menere against the nearest lioness as if to say, "It's time." Then, one by one, the pride began to move, not in panic or haste, but in calm procession, fading into the forest's silver mist. Only the smallest cub hesitated. It looked back, eyes bright, fur catching the new sun, and gave a small, rough sound, halfway between a mewl and a roar. Karim smiled. "Go on," he whispered. Moments later, the forest swallowed them whole. The dawn light spread over the empty fields, soft and golden. The villagers stood silent for a long time. Fear had no place here anymore. What remained instead was awe, the kind that humbles a person into silence. Karim finally spoke, voice barely above a breath. He brought them to show his home again. No one replied, but everyone understood. That day, no axes were lifted in the forest. No traps were set. The grove where they had once freed the lion became a place of quiet offerings, bowls of water, sheaves of grain, even small carvings left under the trees. And on certain mornings, when mist lay low and the valley seemed to dream, the villagers swore they heard a deep, distant roar, not of warning, but of belonging. It echoed softly, like gratitude carried on the wind, reminding them that kindness once given to the wild never truly fades, it just returns, wearing the face of the dawn. The grove was quiet that morning, quieter than usual. The trees swayed lightly, their leaves whispering over the old paths Karim had walked for years. Dew clung to every blade of grass, glinting like tears in the early sun. Karim's steps were slow now. His beard had turned silver, his hands trembled as he leaned on his wooden stick. But there was peace in his eyes, the kind that grows from a lifetime of giving more than taking. The villagers called him Baba Karim, the old man who once saved a lion and changed the way their people saw the wild. No one hunted near the grove anymore. Instead, they brought water and left it near the forest's edge, whispering prayers of gratitude. Karim always said, "The wild remembers kindness." That morning, as he neared the grove, something in the air shifted. The birds had stopped singing. Even the goats stayed close to their pens. Karim felt it before he saw it, that old stillness, heavy and familiar. He stepped through the mist, and there it was. A lion stood where the sunlight touched the forest floor. His menere was thick and golden, his shoulders broad. A faint scar traced along his hind leg, the same place Karim had once pressed a healing cloth so many years ago. The cub had grown into a king. Karim froze, breath caught in his chest. The lion watched him in silence, eyes steady and calm. They stood like that for a long moment, two old beings who remembered the same story. Finally, Karim smiled. "You came back," he whispered. The lion lowered his head, a slow, graceful bow. Then he stepped closer, not threatening, just near enough for the old man to feel the warmth of his breath. Karim reached out, his fingers trembling, and let them rest against the lion's menere. The animal didn't move. Only a deep, rumbling sound came from his chest, soft, resonant, almost like a sigh. It rolled through the grove, through the earth, through Karim's bones. When the lion sat, Karim did too, lowering himself carefully onto a flat stone. They stayed there together, the wind moving gently between them. The air smelled of rain, dust, and wildflowers. From a distance, a few villagers watched, frozen in awe. They didn't dare come closer. The sight was too sacred to break, man and lion sharing silence as equals beneath the morning sun. After a while, the lion rose. He turned toward the trees, looked back once more, and then disappeared into the forest, his golden body fading into shadow. When the villagers finally reached the grove, Karim was still seated, his stick beside him, his face peaceful. He was gone, not in pain, but in calm acceptance, as though he had simply followed the lion into the light. They buried him there, beneath the same acacia tree that had once trapped a lion. Over his grave, they placed a carved bowl of water, kept full by the rains and by loving hands. That night, a single roar echoed across the valley, deep, sorrowful, endless. It lingered in the air long after the sound faded, wrapping the village in silence. The people said the lion had come to mourn his friend. Others said it was a blessing, a farewell from the wild itself. From that day, the grove was never touched again. Children grew up learning Karim's story, leaving water at the trees and whispering his name to the wind. And on quiet nights, when the stars hung low and the air turned still, the villagers swore they could hear a distant sound, a soft, rumbling breath rolling across the hills. They always smiled when they heard it, because they knew the forest was remembering him. The mornings had grown slower, the air softer. Karim's beard, once dark as river mud, was now pale and thin, and his steps traced the earth with care. He no longer carried tools to the field, only his carved walking stick and a small bowl of water for the grove. The villagers had learned his ways. No one felled trees near the forest anymore. Children played close to home, but before sunset, they always paused to leave a few drops of water by the trees. It had become a quiet custom, not commanded, only remembered. Karim was proud of that. It meant the wild was safe. That morning, he woke before dawn. The sky was pale, the mist thick, and the forest smelled of wet bark and soil. He felt a tug in his chest, a wordless pull toward the grove, the same place where he had first met the lion so many years ago. As he walked, the world seemed to hold its breath. No bird sang. No wind stirred. Only silence. Then he saw it. A lion stood between the trees, half in shadow, half in light. His menere was full and dark, catching the gold of the morning sun. A faint scar marked his hind leg, the same place Karim had once pressed a healing cloth. The cub had returned, now a king. Karim stopped. His breath trembled, not from fear, but from memory. The lion looked at him, not as prey, not as intruder, but as something known. Karim whispered, "You came back." The lion lowered his head, menere rippling softly. The air between them felt thick with years, with gratitude, with unspoken understanding. Karim took a slow step forward, resting one hand against his stick. The lion did not move away. For a long time, they stood like that, two old souls, one of the earth and one of the wild, bound by a story no words could explain. Karim reached out, his trembling fingers brushing the air between them, close enough to feel the warmth of the lion's breath. The beast exhaled, a deep, rolling sound that vibrated through the ground. It wasn't a roar, it was gentler, softer, like the forest itself sighing. Then the lion Saturday. Karim followed, lowering himself to a flat stone by the roots of the acacia tree. The two of them remained there as the sun climbed, painting the grove in gold and shadow. From the edge of the field, a few villagers saw them, man and lion, still and silent. No one dared to speak. The sight filled them with awe. After a while, the lion rose. He stepped closer, brushed his menere lightly against Karim's shoulder, and gave one last low rumble, a farewell carried on the wind. Then he turned and walked back into the forest, his body melting into the light. Karim sat quietly, eyes closed, a faint smile on his lips. When the villagers reached him minutes later, he was still sitting there, head bowed, hand resting on his stick. His body was still, but his face was at peace. They buried him beneath that same acacia, the one that had once trapped a lion. Over his grave, they placed a carved bowl filled with water. The villagers named the grove after him, Karim's Grove. That night, a roar echoed across the valley, long, deep, and mournful. It came from the forest and carried far into the sky. None doubted who it belonged to. Some said the lion was grieving. Others said it was a song, a promise that man and wild would remain bound in memory. And for generations after, the villagers kept the bowls filled and the grove untouched. Children were told, this is where kindness spoke louder than fear. And on certain nights, when the air was still, they heard that distant rumble again, a sound of breath, of life, of the wild remembering one man who had once dared to care.